My name is Darren Hoover. I'm the father of Marine Corps Staff Sergeant Darren Taylor Hoover. I'm his dad, but not the same, as we have different middle names. He's a man unto himself, a self-made man that left a hole in our families when he was taken from us by terrorists. He's left behind some pretty big shoes to fill, and if I'm being honest with you and with myself, they will never be filled. Not for lack of trying, as we strive every day to do, but that's the measure of the man he is and that he was raised to be. We miss him immensely, and time will never heal that wound. Kelly and I were blessed with Taylor, and as his parents, like all other parents, were given the sacred responsibility to protect and provide for his well-being. We were tasked with also teaching him about life. Now he's taught us so much more than we ever did with him. We raised him to know right from wrong. We raised him to be a patriot and to love this country that we are blessed to call home. We raised him to help others as they needed it or saw the need to do so, even if it seemed insignificant at the time. We never know the hearts that we're able to touch with just a kind word or a helping hand up. Taylor is the poster child for being a loving and caring human, and took that responsibility to a whole other level. This compassionate and caring man was always looking out for others, but especially his Marines. If someone came to him and asked him a question of him that he didn't know, he would research the answer so that he could give the correct information back, and also expected that from his Marines. This compassion and caring was put to paper by his lieutenant at the time of his death, Lieutenant Byrd, and is as follows. It's called the grown-ass man. What is my number one rule? Taylor would ask this question to his Marines at least once a week, and you could always count on it being asked on a Friday afternoon before the Marines were released for the weekend. And always without fail, Taylor would point to one of the Marines in the formation, and he would answer back, "Be a grown-ass man, Staff Sergeant." Taylor would reply, "Exactly." And with that, the Marines would go on and enjoy their weekend. It was part of our weekly rituals that we had, and this was always the last thing the guys were told before we left for the weekend or the week. Back on a Friday in February, we had a whole group of young Marines who had just joined our platoon a few days earlier. All of them were 18 or 19-year-olds and had just graduated high school approximately 8 months before that. When it came time for Taylor to ask his weekly question, he pointed to one of our brand new Marines and said, as he did every Friday, "What's my number one rule?" Lo and behold, this poor young kid did not know the answer, as this was his first Friday with the platoon. And as you can imagine, I don't know, Staff Sergeant. And this kid said this in a voice that was barely audible and full of fear as he looked down at the ground. At this point, everybody in the platoon is silent, and no one is really sure what is about to happen. Even the more senior Marines had a look of hesitation on their faces. You could see them trying to calculate what Taylor was going to do next. This was the first time this had ever happened, and I myself was pretty curious to see how this was going to turn out. "Well, you know what? Today's your lucky day," said Taylor. "We're going to give you the answer to this. Hey, Sergeant Tree, can you tell this young Marine what my number one rule is?" Your number one rule is to be a grown-ass man, Staff Sergeant, said Sergeant Tree in a loud, booming voice, so that everyone, especially the new junior Marines, could be sure to hear. Exactly. Now I'll tell you what, I'll give you another chance, said Taylor to the now clearly flustered young Marine. What do you think I mean by that? And once again, in the most quiet voice that a human could possibly emit, this poor young kid goes, I don't know, Staff Sergeant. I figured that, said Taylor. So let me tell you. Being a grown-ass man means that you will always look out for the Marines that you see around you, because they will always look out for you. If you see someone needs help, go over and ask them what you can do to help them. If you need help with anything, you need to be mature enough to ask for help. Being a grown-ass man means that if you make a mistake, that you will own up to it and then work to correct it. It means that if you have to think twice about doing something, then you probably shouldn't do it. If you make a mistake, it's okay because no one is perfect. We will still stand by you and support you, but a grown-ass man learns from his mistakes. But understand this. You, as a grown-ass man, need to understand that there is no such thing as a mistake when it comes to morality. You are well aware of what things like lying or stealing that are wrong, and those, in fact, are not mistakes. Those are conscious decisions that you, as a grown-ass man, are not allowed to make. Does that make sense? It does, Staff Sergeant, said this young Marine, though not in a quivering whisper as he'd been speaking, but in a tone that was filled with confidence and respect. Taylor was the big brother and the father figure that so many young Marines never had. A lot of them had come to us from broken homes or had been raised by their grandmothers or other family members. It wasn't that they hadn't been taught what was right from wrong. It was that some of them had just never had a father figure that truly cared for them. Taylor was exactly that person. There was never a time when he was not acting in a way that should not be emulated. He would never hesitate to pull a Marine, regardless of rank, and pull them to the side and ask him how things were going if he had the slightest inclination that there was something bothering him. There are so many young men that Taylor took the time to mentor, to coach, to listen to when he saw that they were going through something or just needed someone to confide in. And I can say with the fullest confidence that there are countless young men who have become not just better Marines, but better fathers, husbands, sons, and friends because of the influence that he had on them. The loss of Taylor is a void that simply cannot be filled. I want to assure everyone that Taylor will forever live on and that his impact will live on through those that he considered his brothers. When new Marines check in, they will hear the stories, not on just his heroic actions, but they will come to embody the values that he stood for. And just like those he directly led, they will as well go on to better men because of it. Now, as I said in the beginning, that his mother and I took the responsibility for Taylor's safety and his well-being. And in that day in September, we transferred that responsibility to the Marine Corps, the Department of Defense, and the others in the various administration since he joined the Marine Corps 11 years before his death. The most recent administration, Department of Defense and the Marine Corps, did not uphold their end of that contract. I know there are those that will say that Taylor and his brothers in arms signed on the dotted line and knew the consequences that could occur, as we have been at war for 20 years. And they would be correct. But this didn't need to happen in the manner that it did. And for those who had power over our military, know that they made a conscious decision that led to the chaotic and frantic withdrawal from Afghanistan. For the Secretary of Defense, General Austin, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Milley, to say that they're satisfied with the withdrawal of our troops is nothing short of disgusting and ignorant. Retired Marine Corps General McKenzie can be included in this as well, as these were his Marines, and he should have known better. With all of these generals having approximately 90 years of experience combined, and to come up with the plan that they attempted to carry out is despicable. And to say to Congress that they thought it was a good withdrawal are sorely, sorely mistaken. Then to have individuals like John Kirby come in and say that he did not see from the chaos from his perch is both tone deaf and ignorant. We've all seen the pictures and the videos as he was speaking. Now to the Secretary of State. Our kids were not trained extensively on what to look for when looking for the green cards, the passports, and the other pieces of paper that were needed to get out of that country, and to assist our Americans that were there, our allies. The Afghans, which just wanted to get out and a new life out from under the Taliban rule. To have the ambassador to Afghanistan changed out midway through all of this should be a huge red flag. Why was that done? Because the prior ambassador was not on board with the decisions being made and the way it was being handled? If that's the case, then something needs to be done. In closing, I'm calling out Secretary Blinken, Secretary Austin, General Milley, General McKenzie, Lieutenant Colonel Whitehead, who could not give the order to the snipers to take out the bomber before he detonated his vest, and ultimately the president. Do what our son did. Be a grown-ass man. Admit to your mistakes. Learn from them so that this doesn't happen ever again. You all need to resign immediately. Our sons and daughters have more integrity in their little toes than every one of them combined. You owe it to our families here today, to the other Gold and Silver Star families that have gone before, and most of all to the veterans who have given so much for this country so that we have the freedoms that we enjoy today. Thank you.
Thank you.